You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and check us out online at beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have our friend Dale Fredrickson back on. Hopefully you remember a few months ago we got him on and he was talking. We talked about a lot of things, but we had him on to talk about his Kickstarter for his new album of poetry on Wounds and Wonder. And Dale, we're so glad to have you back on to talk about it and really about anything. But you know, the album's out now and it's fantastic. Hey man, thanks for coming on, and thanks for producing this great work.
Oh man, thank you both. Gosh, thanks for having me back.
Our pleasure. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it was like to make On Wounds and Wonder and kind of that process, because you've got, dude, there's a lot here, and you clearly pour out your heart in so much of it and all of it. I mean, it just drips with grace and love, and tell us what it's like to kind of hit that process of producing something like this.
Man, thank you. I think like what I loved about our last conversation, and I'm sure you guys will post it so they can see it, was we talked about language.
Yeah.
How important language is, especially in like a postmodern culture where we're talking about faith and what it means to sort of reinvigorate traditional language, but to put new language to this experience of mystery, divine, God. And really at the heart of my work is trying to find new ways to help people see and think about and feel deeply what faith could mean and its possibilities, and get beyond some cliched understanding so that we can really get back to that core heart experience, you know, so that's kind of where I start. And I don't know where you want me to. Did you want to know a little bit about what it means to sort of write a poem, then go into a sound studio, and then how it works on the page, or what were you thinking?
I think so, because, you know, I watch you on Facebook and, you know, we have these dialogues and conversations and stuff. And in a lot of what, you know, I've seen there, just little bits and pieces are popping up in this album. And right. I know that's a process. It's like writing a sermon. You know, we start in one place and we end in a completely different place. But something like this is over the course of time, and you get to sit and refine. And, you know, I looked up, I'm using, you know, Crayon the World as a sermon illustration this weekend on discipleship, on the Great Commission. And I was looking at it in the Keeping Pulse book and on your website, and they're different from where you started to where you end. And so I know that when you sit down to write this stuff, that there's this whole, you know, what's it like to, there's that editing process. I mean, you know, we never end where we begin.
Right. That's great. Yeah. For me, it's like hashtag always crafting, right? Like
right.
The sermon edit, the poem edit, the whatever you're creating, even like digital graphics. I'm like, oh, that does not look right on the website or whatever. And so kind of how my process works is, especially for a project like Wounds and Wonder, I actually, because I have a full-time day gig as a pastor like you do, right. And in any creative field, there are very few creatives that get to spend the length of their days creating all day, right? And actually creativity works by deadlines and restrictions and putting things together in innovative ways under time constraints. It makes for the best creative work. And I mean, look at kids, right? Rocks, sticks in the backyard, leaves and snow, and you've got like some of the best creations the world has ever seen, you know? But what I do for my creative process is I usually have a question that I have a set of questions that I'm asking about the world, or about some faith problem, or something that just kind of fascinates me. And that way my days can be a little more disciplined. So then I'll write on that question for an hour a day. And that allows me just to keep in the rhythm, you know, and, you know, it's like life happens and kids need attention and you love them and people need attention. And, but if I keep that question. So for me, I got to shortcut the creative process, and not shortcut it, but just be disciplined with my big project I'm working on right now. For the last 2 years was this, and I'm not sure I told you, but the question I was asking was, how do we overcome the wounds that often sabotage us so we can experience wonder? And I like just read everything, like, and I was like fascinated by like quirky stories. Like, I know you both love baseball. I was fascinated by Bo Jackson, and those 30 for 30 ESPN movies are so phenomenal at giving you a picture. And his is awesome because, you know, he's this star football player, could have multi-million-dollar #1 draft pick, but he loved baseball. And so he wasn't touted as a like recruit at a college. And then his senior year, he goes on a football recruiting trip. And basically, as the story goes, they promised him they had checked NCAA violations, and they didn't. And he lost his senior year of baseball eligibility. And it was crushing to him. And he the way he tells it is he felt he was just good enough to really break through. So then the team that broke the protocols, they actually draft him in the NFL as the first round draft pick. And he, in this awesome decision, says, no, I'm not going to play for you. And I was like, oh my gosh. So how do you go from kind of losing that season, losing your dream, and feel that type of wound, to then again, like, be like Bo knows everywhere, right? From like this rebound of like the most phenomenal athlete maybe, you know, of our day, that could play both so well. So like those kind of stories sort of like got me, just like inspire me of thinking about this wounds and wonder. And then I'll have a short idea, and I'll put it on social media stuff. I love Instagram. Instagram is my jam. And then if I like the way people react to it, because it changes things or pushes me in different ways, and then I kind of take those pieces, and the ones that I feel, and I really want that shiver down the spine as an artist. Like, it sounds bad, like, so, you know, I did all the academic training, and I know like analytical, historical, critical thought, but like I want to make people feel, and I've just changed my whole, like, yep, absolutely, critical thinking matters, reasoning matters, we should think about these things. But at the end of the day, I really like things because of the way they make me feel, you know. The National album, you know, there's a new Typhoon album out where he talks about, the whole narrative is about what if we got amnesia and couldn't remember anything. Right. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. The Arcade Fire album out. Right. It's a disco album about anti-consumerism. It's incredible. And so I'm like, this is so good. So then what I do is I work with my musician, Dopsy is who I work with. And he will sort of say, what do you got? And basically we work all day, and then I show up at his house after we both put our kids to bed at 9 o'clock, and we work like 9 a.m. to 2 o'clock in the studio. And we're just like, I'm giving him what I've got, and he's making melodies and beats, and we're just conversing back and forth on, you know, what can make into a product. So then I'll record vocals, and he'll put it with the music. And so we have something by the end of the night, but then the next day we're playing in our heads and like sending each other notes of like, that's how Cran the World lyrics change, of like, because I've talked about poetry has musicality to it, you know. It should sort of pop in your heads a little differently. And so good sermons, right? Rhythm, cadence, like you feel that. And so then we'll go back and re-record vocals, and then I'm just like always not satisfied with how that process works. Right. even on the album you have, I changed the track 3, White Apathy, like 25 times. I changed, like, Dopsy's like he's the kindest, like, talented guy. He's always like, yeah, no problem, Dale. But my other friends are like, what is your problem? My wife is like, no, you know? Right. And then track 17 was actually a poem that you liked online. It was originally a totally different poem, and I just did not like what was going on there. And so then I rewrote that whole poem because I wanted it to, because the album begins in a train station, and then it ends at the communion table. Yeah. And I kind of thought that was like really cool imagery for Wounds and Wonders, you know? Yeah. So, I don't know if that was kind of what you were thinking about.
No, it is. Because what drew me to you when we first met at U15 was the musicality of it. And if I was a better musician, Um, I love that. And that's something that's always drawn to me in scripture is this, man, when we read scripture, there's this beat, there's this theme. And if I was a better musician, I would take scripture and put them to music a lot like you do with poetry, but I suck at it. So I don't. That's not my gift. But I would love to find people who do that. Gosh, yeah, no, that's it. That process of God, always working and always finding these moments of, no, I can do this better.
Well, I feel like he just gave us a good excuse to continue to play Xbox, because we tend to do some of our better conversations when we're playing it. Because while you have the 9 to 2 working on your craft, we work from 9 to 2 working on our craft through Xbox. I mean, I think I've just justified that with my wife to be able to do that now. Because if Dale can do it, I can do it too.
That's right.
And I think that's what it is like you talked about. You've been begin with a question, and I've been thinking a lot about my sermon writing lately, because I'm in a new appointment, and so like that's changed a little bit. My rhythm is a little off on that, and I started thinking about when we take time for that craft and we like get serious about it. And, we like, I actually have started in my day, like in my calendar now, like this is sermon writing time. And and so I start with a question, or I'll start with like, okay, so where did I leave off? And I'll look where I left off and like move on or move forward, or no, that's not good. And, just, and I think that's one of the things that's always, I've always been intrigued by you, Dale, is you're always open about your craft and how you have shaped and changed it over time, and been open with that, and have been raw with that, in the sense of just like, hey, this is what it is, and this is what it was, and moving forward and making it better. And that's just one of the things, as I was like reading this and thinking, because there's been a couple of these that I've heard you do live, and it's like, wow, like that's not what I remember. I mean, I remember the rhythm and cadence, and like, to me, that's really, especially when I preach, that's like super important to me. But like, I was like, I don't remember those words, but man, this is a lot better than what I remember. And so I think that's the whole deal, is like, when we put that together, and whether it's preaching, sermon, or whatever our art is asking how it connects with people. And like I said, this album, I was listening to it yesterday, and it's just like people were stopping in my office just to listen to the album, which is kind of a nice change of pace. So
yeah. Well, and you're right. Just that coming together with what we do, whether it's art, it's poems, it's preaching, it's how we connect with people. Our goal is to make them think, to make them feel. Yeah. And if we step into our pulpits, whatever those are, and that's not our end goal, if we're just there giving information, if they're just saying words to not get a reaction, not like, oh my God, what do you need to say, but here's where I'm at, just to get people thinking and feeling in a way that causes them to act and respond, and in their relationships with people and with God. I mean, and I think this album does that well. To draw it back to that, but
the goal, right? I know some artists disagree, but like, I think art is communication. Whether you're an abstract painter, whether you're writing sermons for a local congregation, whether you have a microphone and you're doing podcasts, you're trying to communicate with human beings in some way, right? With style and grace that somehow opens up the mystery to all. Madeline Engel, I love the book Walking on Water. Is like, I think we should require that in like grad school.
Right.
She says that our goal is to find the cosmos in the chaos. And so she uses the alliteration, but to find this world, this humming world of grace and love and beauty within the chaos of everything shattered and broken. And I think that is a high call for us, as whether we're on Sunday morning or Friday night at the poem show,
Right. Right. So what was it like doing this Kickstarter, man? I've never done a Kickstarter, and having a response from just people.
Yeah. It is like, that's a really good question. I had never done, it was more more anxiety than I thought.
Right.
I had done, so this was my third project. So I felt like I had a big deal with myself of like, no, I'm going to make sure I like really can deliver the product, a good product, and I knew kind of my timelines, and since I'd done this before. And the project I had it further, it's tricky because you want the project to be further enough along because some people I know, they fund it before they've done the project. Well, oh man, like that creates so much anxiety in me because you kind of want to know where you're headed, at least a really strong ways. So it was exhilarating and exhausting, and really beautiful because it's hard in our world. Like music is hard. Like look how many good albums have come out this year, and look how much art is, and look, music, we could download it anywhere. So it's really hard to make art and to try to give it to the world as a gift. And so it's helpful to me, especially when, we're like, I'm a low to middle class artisan, like I don't have like a trust fund or like someone that's going to pay the monthly bills, because I could get lost in the sound studio or in nature writing poems, but like, it doesn't matter if I can't, tell my wife we're going to be okay, like buy new shoes for my son. So it was really beautiful the way people supported it, and it was sort of I didn't know that my work was like making that difference, so it was really cool. Yeah. And one of the most beautiful stories is this lady who had really been touched by my poems. She was using them in like a weekly Bible study, like to help her group like rethink certain passages of the Bible. And I was like, wow. And her and her husband, they don't have a lot of money, and they set aside this small amount because they really wanted to see this happen for me. And about like halfway through, they were really worried, and they're like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I was like, it's okay. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And she said, is there anything we could do? Do you have any like creative ideas? And I was like, I got lots of creative ideas. And so she basically had set this amount aside. And it wasn't a lot. It was extremely generous, but it wasn't like, a ton of money, which made it even more beautiful. Right. And she said, okay, and I came up with the idea of the hour of power. Right. And I had my daughter with her, like her little basketball with her like fist up, and it was like, okay. And I said, will you match up to this amount for every dollar this hour? And she was like super honored, and so she did it. And then like what happened though is people just, I don't know what it was, like one person's generosity like stirred the hearts of like, we got like 30 gifts in that hour. And so it was like, it multiplied the gift. So it wasn't like one rich patron paid for it. It was like someone who had said, this is my little shekel to give, right? And then everyone was like multiplied the shekels. So that was like, oh my gosh, community, organic art, local art still matters, and people value it, So that was just super neat to see. So it was cool. It's underground, it's organic people, and then seeing people get their stuff, I'm like, yeah.
Well, like when I was watching it, and I was keeping a pretty close eye on it, just like, man, this has got to make, and I don't know what I got to do to make this make, and can I really turn around and just like say, hey church, let's fund this, or like I like really, I was like, I want this to work for Dale because I knew it was so good, and that's just one of those things that when we fully believe in something, and it's just like, man, we want to make sure, we want people to experience this, and that was my whole deal. It's like, I want people to experience, have the ability to listen to your album and share that with people. So like, it was easy for us, like at least for me, like, I have no problem trying to help Dale out on this, and I know that like both Zach and I felt like with the podcast, this is like, we're going to make this kind of our best top priority that we can, and and I think that's the deal, is like, if we, just imagine if we could do that in our churches, just like, hey, this is what they do and they do it well, and let's help them out as best we can. And that's, I really enjoyed, like, you talked about, you started with the train station and at the communion table. And I don't know, it seems like every time when I start your album, because I listened to it 2 or 3 times since yesterday, and just like, I sit there and I'll always stop at the first one and just sit there and just like, man, those opening lines just are so, they just grab me. And
it puts me in Union Station. I mean, I've walked through there, I've seen those people, and I'm like, oh, here I am, just sitting and watching. I love it. I mean, it's amazing.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
That's so great. That's so great. You never know how that's gonna you never know with art, you never know with a sermon.
Right.
You know, like I imagine chefs do the same. They pour over
Right.
this like amazing food, and you know, the kids like,
Right.
really good barbecue. Right? So thank you. That really means a lot. Thank you.
Well, isn't that how we feel about our sermons? Like, we're like, this is a great sermon. Everyone's like, man, we hated that.
Yeah.
And then like the ones you walk away like, man, that was a horrible sermon. Like, people are like, that was so awesome. Like,
Right.
really? Because like, didn't you like, you didn't feel like that sucked? Like, I mean, like that was me on Sunday. My allergies were bothering me and stuff. And I got home and I was like, man, that didn't feel right. I felt off. I just didn't feel like I had my rhythm. And we went and ate with my daughter's made friends with this congregant member, and so we went over to the house to have dinner and fellowship, and the daughter was praying and she talked about thank you God for our do-overs, and that's what I talked about on Sunday, and I'm just like, oh, she either knows how to get my heart and she knows what she's doing, or that sermon was a lot better than what we had imagined. And I know it's probably been the same thing with you and your work, because this is I think this is the third book of yours I've bought, and have just found, every now and then there's just so much like, oh, I've got it. This will fit in a sermon, and so it becomes earmarked. And I think that's powerful to draw in on that. And, Dale, I really thank you for the work that you do. You're doing great kingdom work.
You
thank
are.
you for that.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you.
So there's something, there's following, just having both your albums and, your books and stuff, dude, there's a continuation on here of some things. And that just, oh gosh, Mason Jar in your first album, just, we had those prints on our wall in our bedroom. I mean, that's just something my wife and I are like, we want to see this every day. These words speak. And then you get into How Long Must We Wait? And I shared that on my Facebook yesterday, just because I think that's something people need to hear today. But dude, there's you're from the first one, my dad's laugh, and the continuation of that on this album, dude, those are deep. And I don't know if you had intentions of connecting those things or making them this continuation of ideas and stories, but dude, that's those are the things that it's like, Dale poured his heart into this. This is him, and there's no doubt about it. And thank you for that. These are liturgies, these are confessions, these are pardons, these are invitations to come from Union Station to the table that are just beautiful and connect with folks. And to do that, that's hard, man. To pour out like that in such a way that you're like, wow.
You guys are, what a gift. You guys are, thank you guys. I kind of just have to keep going. I appreciate the pause you guys really appreciate it. I think I'm actually always shocked, because even though I have a question, I don't know what's going to come out from a poem. I don't know what's going to come out when I'm creating when I have initial idea. So for example, I had this idea. I was writing this poem about forgiveness and Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and really trying to reflect on that and get to that level of heart again. And the poem was like looking like a little like as I was writing it, was looking like a bullet. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I've been reading a couple other poets, and they put more shape to theirs. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna make a bullet poem. I'm gonna make a poem. And so I was writing it, and then like it was surprising me how the bullet looked like a chalice. And of course, like for me, like Eucharist is like the most important thing we should talk about. And so this bullet started to look like this bullet sort of made chalice,
Oh, wow.
So I wrote this poem, and so the creative process was like this image, these words, this keep pressing myself. So I never know. And so now from that, I've met this really wonderful man in India who's a graphic designer, and he's going to design this bullet, and
nice.
It's really cool. Like, so I never know. And the poem is kind of like dark and painful, given some of the things our nation's going through. The Twitter sphere with our president really has just been like, whoa. and so rough. And so that kind of came out from this. And so I never know. And another thing about like the father poems, like, oh my gosh, like I don't mean to write those. So it's not intentional. It was more like, yeah, fatherlessness is a part of my life, and I'm hoping that it resonates.
Right.
And it kind of like was when the poem you're talking about, I think I can't remember what I called it now, but I always forget the titles too. You pour hours and hours, but the poem you're talking about was which I haven't done much with, the burden that buries men.
Right.
And when I got to the heart of that one, I was like, oh my gosh, like fatherlessness is a real problem in my life.
Yeah.
So like poetry exposes like these nerves, and and I like what some people have said is, writing heals us too, and
right.
So
well, it does, and and that one connect, because my dad laughs. That poem, man, if I have to preach my dad's funeral, that's gonna be it. I'm just going to read that poem and go about my business, because I don't think I can do anything else, But, the burden that buries men, that makes me think of myself, not so much my dad, but man, how do my kids? I don't want this to, that just, it hits me of, man, how do my kids view me? And am I being, am I falling into these burdens? And so those two connected in those things, because then I look at my dad and I'm like, oh man, I don't have that fatherlessness thing there, but it's, I don't want my kids to have to, and so you connect, and that is healing. And, in all of those ways, whether you identify with it or you go, oh, I don't want to be that, and it's huge. And it's those little points and the way we use those words and put those together that cause us to look up from these poems and to look out in the world and go, okay, where am I at? Who am I? What am I doing? How am I speaking love and grace into the world, whether it's with my family or with the church or just strangers on the street, that we encounter in Union Station? How are we bringing all of this to the table?
Yeah, that's really important. It's really interesting. I was just on this little panel at this like wonderful church in Boulder where they had me talk about art and faith, and on the panel was this incredible lady who set up a dance studio in Denver, who's talking about like healthy eating for young women who are doing dance and healthy performance anxiety, and like creating a video around where young girls and women get to like do this amazing art thing of dance, and she's talking about the faith that's involved in that. And then another couple from Costa Rica who are in a band in Costa Rica, and one of them was like a child star in Costa Rica, like was not a part of the church, and then through this whole thing became a part of a church, and they started this church band. Well, because of like the culture in Costa Rica and what's going on, like their like church tunes are playing in like clubs on Friday night, right?
Wow.
And they're like, oh, that's fascinating, and so they've got this kind of culture, and it made me think. They were like, so yeah, like what do you do with your poems, Dale? And I'm like, yeah, not playing in clubs. But it made me think, like, I think that why I do what I do is so that we can sort of change that language, explain, stretch that language of faith and mystery and beauty, so that people in bars or they can connect with the deeper heart of grace and faith and a life of God. That's sort of what I hope my words do, is cook something up that like makes it fresh and new for people, that can be very human too. I think that hitting people on that human, that's when your preaching is great, right? When you're like right at the human level. So, as we all know, the image of Christianity needs some restoration in the American, right?
Well, and that's what. So I'm using. We're talking about failure right now. What a great way to start off the year, but by talking actually about failure in our church. And we were talking about this week is talking about being stuck in the pit. And I was this morning. I'd opened up your book and I was just kind of thumbing through, just like what are some ones that are kind of speaking to me. And I came across this could get better. And I was thinking about you start off with the line, this could get better, and your life bloom again. And thinking about the context that I'm in, and thinking about trying to give these people hope that have struggled for so long, and saying, this will be better again. And just kind of like, wow, like this is gonna, I don't know how I'm gonna use this on Sunday, but this poem has got to be used on Sunday. And I think that's the key, is like, you've been able to provide a resource that for people of faith to have a chance to connect in a way that wasn't just a normal, there are a lot of great books out there on faith, but man, no one's ever really utilized the poetry aspect of, the life and rhythm of life that really is. And there's definitely some depth and faith in the stuff that you've done. Like I said, we've known each other for a long time, and I've kind of just, I've just been paying attention to your work and what you do. And it's like, wow, this is like, I want to be like Dale. Like Dale gets it. Like,
right.
Like I wish I could do what Dale does, but then, it also draws me back in and say, well, that I do mine in the way that I do mine. And that's just the beauty of it. And, I thank you, Dale. Like, I really do, for all that you do, because you're doing some great things, with your work and your day job.
Yeah.
And so, just want to encourage you to keep on going, man. We're glad that, like I said, I was glad that the Kickstarter, when it finished and like it met its goal, I was like, yes, Christmas, like it's trees. Like I felt like a Christmas miracle. Like it happened, because I was like, I really was on edge for you. It was like, man, this isn't going to make, and like, man, I don't want this for, like, I want this to work. Like, and some of it was like, I felt like we had a tie to this. Like, if it wouldn't work for Dale, it's not going to work for Zach. I'm trying to do. And so it was like, I really felt like, just kind of like, what can I do? Like, surely I can find someone with $1 million just to write you a check. But like, and I think that's the deal, is like, with faith, the big thing, at least for me, is about connection and connecting people. And you provide a great thing that I like. If I know that people that would receive it well, like, man, I got something for you to look at, really enjoy this. And so that's why, like, the little piece that you gave, the print, went in a really kind of a strategic place for people to see. And so I'm kind of excited to see how people respond to it. 'Cause I have people that come to my office just to look at my stuff on my walls or, books. And so, like, I'm intrigued to see what the response will be with that new piece there. And so, Dale, we thank you for your time. And we know that you have a day job that you have to get to, and know that you're always welcomed on the Bearded Theologians, unless you're in Zach's. Is that your bear call, Zach?
This is the sign for the zombie apocalypse. I have to go fight zombies. So
this is your day job.
That's right. This is my day job. No, this is the universal, or the community call for lunch. Our siren goes off at noon every day. Yeah.
Are you serious? And
yeah.
Is there like places people gather, or
no? It's just, hey, go to lunch.
it's the Pavlov's bell. Just like, here you go.
Right.
It's lunchtime.
I think a lot of it's just a daily test to make sure it's still working, but
So we want to encourage our listeners to go to Dale's website, and we'll have that listed in our post and all that stuff. He's got some great stuff up there, and go buy the album, because it's a great album. You'll enjoy listening to it. Buy the book, because it's always good to have text as well.
Dale, tell us your Instagram and stuff like that, where we can find you on social media.
Oh man, so the Instagram is just at Poems by Dale Carl. And then it's just dalefredrickson.com. On my website, you can see everything. And Bandcamp is a great place because you can get the album, and you can see where the book and all the prints that you guys were talking about, and the t-shirt. I still got some t-shirts left.
Sweet. Yeah, they're great shirts.
They are awesome shirts. Like, they accentuate the dad bod very well. And so, like, that was the first thing that came to mind when I put it on this morning. I looked, I was like, oh, it's a dad bod shirt.
That is so funny. Oh my goodness, the dad bod.
So we thank you, and you're always welcome to come back. And for our listeners, we want to encourage you to go to our website, like our stuff. We need some reviews. It always helps to have reviews, because then people actually find out about us. But we do exist, at least in our own heads.
That's right.
But we thank you for our listeners, and we thank you, Dale, for coming today. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
And I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening, and we hope that you share our content online through Facebook and social media, and we hope that you check out our Beardcast store at beardedtheologians.com and pick up some great Bearded Theologians gear. We hope you have a good day.